second summit. This is actually the Wealth Woman Summit, and it's the second one in Malawi. And in case you wonder what is the Wealth Woman Summit, it is a forum for women where information, insights, and ideas are shared as a way of women to develop themselves. But also, consequently, it is happening on the day when we are commemorating World Women's Day, after a month of campaigns to recognize efforts by women the world over. And in this summit, our main speaker is actually the Deputy Minister of Labor, Vera Kantukule. But we have main speakers who will be in a panel discussion. These include Dr. Candida Nankumwa, Country Director, Foundation for a Smoke-Free World Agriculture Transformation Initiative. And of course, Tanya Clark, who is the founder of Invicor. And of course, we have the EU delegation to Malawi, that's Jose Maria Medina Navarro. And of course, let me hand you over to Deliwe Makata as she directs.
Good morning. Welcome once again to the second Wealth Women Summit. The first of its kind was held on the 30th of October 2020. I was part of the people that were in attendance, and I can assure you that you are in the right place. Just before we begin this morning, allow me to first call in front our guests so they may take their seats. We've got the Right Honorable Madam Vera Kamtukwe, who is the Deputy Minister of Labor. We've got Tanya Clark, who is the founder of Even Grow, and we've got Dr. Candida Nankumwa, who is the founder and director of the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World Agricultural Transformation Initiative. And we also have amongst us a delegation to the Republic of Malawi, EU delegation to the Republic of Malawi, Mr. Jose Navarra. May you please come to the front and take your seats. If we could give them a good round of applause as they do, please. As we proceed, my name is Deliwe Alipo Ruth Makata. I am an author. You've got on your desks a book titled Go for Gold, which happens to be a book that I authored. I'm also the founder and director of a girl, child, and women empowerment organization called Women Inspire. And I've been trusted with the humble duty of directing this auspicious event this morning. And I hope I won't let you down. I have also been asked to introduce the book that is in your hands. And a sort of a poem, but disclaimer, I am not a poet. I have no intentions of ever being one, but I put together words that I'm going to just make them sound like they're a poem. So here goes. I'm sure we all know that today we are celebrating the International Women's Day, where we recognize the amazing work that so many women are doing in our world in different fields. And it just happened that this amazing event is held on this day. How awesome. And the theme this year is Choose to Challenge. So here goes the poem, sort of, that I titled, So You Have Potential. So you actually have potential to lean in and desire to become everything that you can possibly become, and so much more. You have the potential to lean into your greatness and achieve. To decide to follow through with passion, persistence, and commitment to everything that sparks the life of your soul and ignites the flame of your destiny, because you have potential. You've got the potential to feed the contents of your ability and to produce undeniable results that do not answer to your gender, but of course speaks of your unfailing womanhood and everything that you can possibly achieve, because yes, you're a woman. You're a woman, an extraordinary woman who's got the power to organize her winning strategies to frame her success and her winning realities, because you've got the potential to have an aim that does not waver, a goal that does not shake regardless of circumstances, and a vision that is so focused even the clearest of a spot has got nothing on it, because you are a woman of potential. You have the mind for it, a God mind before the God mind. You've got the power to achieve because you're a woman, a wealth woman, a woman who goes beyond to achieve her goal. You are an overcoming woman. You're a woman of drive, a woman who knows how to demand more of herself, a woman who knows to challenge herself because she knows she's got extraordinary potential. The potential to be creative and productive, the potential to use your inner power to produce something out of nothing, because you're a woman who knows that God, her creator, is limitless and she can only be limitless. You have the potential to be everything and so much more. Thank you. Without further ado, let me invite to the stage Dr. Candida Nakumwa, who's going to give us a presentation on making a mark in job creation from an agricultural economic perspective. Thank you.
Good morning. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the organizers for this event and the moderator for the session for such an inspiring start. I see women that have got potential in various aspects of their lives. And as the speaker or the moderator said, I'm here this morning to share a few thoughts on the potential that agriculture sector has in creating jobs for women. When the organizer called me and told me about the topic, I was like, that's very obvious. Because when you look at Malawi, an agrarian economy, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? When you read about our statistics, more than 80% of our population is rural. And when you ask what is it that they are doing in the rural areas, most of them are in agriculture. And somehow it sounded like a very obvious topic. And I was a bit hesitant to say yes to come and speak today. But somehow I found an angle which I hope that will be inspirational, and that most of you here will be inspired to become players, active players, creating jobs in the agriculture sector. So to start with, when you look at agriculture in Malawi, it contributes roughly 22% to the GDP. So that's a very high contribution that we are starting from, just to signify the role that agriculture is playing in the country, contributing more than 90% of exports, employing more than 70% of the labor force. However, when you look at, even if you look at those significant statistics, agriculture is still characterized by low productivity due to several challenges that not only women farmers face. So before I get down to the woman farmer, I just wanted to give you the context that agriculture in Malawi is operating at right now. So very low productivity. You're lucky when you get a farmer that is producing at around 40% of potential. For the most part, below 40% of potential. So where is the other 60% going? What is it that we are doing to narrow that gap? So maybe you're asking, why is it that we are producing at such low levels of productivity? We have very low access to modern technologies. And when I talk about technologies, I'm talking about seeds that are improved. I'm talking about mechanization. I'm talking about fertilization, irrigation, all those kinds of technologies, very, very low use in the agriculture sector. The other thing is we have very low access to competitively priced finance, which then becomes a very key challenge that farmers, as well as other players in the agricultural value chains, are facing today. And then lastly, I just wanted to allude to limited access to structured markets. You might ask, we've got markets. In agriculture, what we're producing is food, but I'm qualifying it. Limited access to structured and competitive markets. For people to find their investments in agriculture to be meaningful, there is need for them to access structured as well as competitive markets, something that is predictable, something that can give them a source of a meaningful employment. Now, as we discuss the role of agriculture in creating jobs for women in Malawi, we need to first have the right perspective of who the smallholder farmer, who this female smallholder farmer in Malawi really is. So when you look at the population figures, I'm sure Honorable Deputy Minister of Labor might talk about some of those statistics, but more than 50%, around 52% of the Malawian population are women. And that replicates itself within the agriculture sector. So women provide more than 70% of the agricultural labor. And they produce more than 70% of the food that we consume locally. And I want you to mark this. Even though they are producing more than 70% of the food that we're consuming locally, this is mainly rain-fed agriculture. And when I looked at the topic of the day, making a mark in job creation, what is a job supposed to do? It's supposed to help someone earn an income. And I think we can extend that. That income needs to be sustainable. And when you look at this woman farmer, the woman smallholder farmer in Malawi, what she's doing is one crop a year, rain-fed agriculture. That means their income is not sustainable. They are earning an income once a year. So later on we'll get to that. How do we elongate that? How do we make it a sustainable source of income from the agriculture sector? Now, when you also look at this woman, she's characterized by low levels of literacy, limited control over factors of production. I'm talking of things like land. I talked about capital. At least now things are changing. But in the past, when you go to the bank, you're asking for a loan, you have to produce collateral. And for the most part, women are not signatories to the collateral that their families have. And they used to ask them to go and get their husbands to come and present that collateral on their behalf. At least now things are changing. So we are beginning to see a bit of change on that front. Due to the vulnerabilities that women have, you find that for the most part in agriculture sector, women are producing at less than 25% of their male counterparts. So already you are starting from a disadvantaged position as a woman. And now the biggest issue is, where is this woman in the agricultural value chains? So like I said, it's tempting to say women are already employed in the agriculture sector. But where are they in the agriculture sector? What position are they occupying? So when you take it as a value chain, where you have production, you have value addition, you have distribution, logistics, and the rest of things, you find that this woman is mainly occupying the base of that value chain. She's either supplying labor, producing at a very small scale, and not really upgrading to move to the other parts of the value chain where the most value is derived. So where is this woman? She's not adding value. She's not actively participating in the other aspects of the value chain where you are getting the most value. So you begin to see her missing. So you remember I said more than 70% at the production level, They are supplying their labor. But then as you go up, as you begin to add value, as you begin to engage with the markets, you begin to see this woman missing. And that's something that we need to challenge, and that's something that we need to address. When you look, for example, at the tobacco value chain, less than 10% of all tobacco farms in Malawi are owned by women. And that's really something that we need to address. Therefore, to achieve agriculture that delivers jobs and sustained incomes for women, we should prioritize the following. Facilitate access to modern technologies and other interventions. So I'll keep repeating: access to finance, access to markets that promote agriculture transformation. You begin to see the farmers increasing their productivity and diversifying into high-valued commodities. Why should a woman just be producing the low-valued commodities? Who said a woman cannot produce a high-valued commodity? We need to strategically invest in irrigation for women farmers. I'm glad the EU is here. What kind of programs do we as development partners begin to promote that help this woman to get a sustainable income throughout the year? Irrigation is one of those technologies that we need to promote. Instead of a farmer producing once a year, a little investment in irrigation, they will begin to produce twice a year. They can produce 3 times a year, making their source of income sustainable. In the short term, when you look at the low skills, because that's the other challenge that we have amongst women, very, very low levels of skills, we need maybe labor-intensive technologies that can absorb some of those. But remember, I qualified in the short term, because over time, we need to begin to move to high-tech that can then help the farmers to be competitive, not only locally, but also globally. The other critical thing is, who is building the capacity for these women? Low levels of education, low levels of skills. Most women are not able to effectively engage with the markets. They are not able to effectively engage with commercial banks. So we need somebody that can come in and hold their hand. And that's where we need organizations, institutions that can contribute to building capacities for these women, organize them into formidable groups that cannot be afraid to engage with actors in the value chain. When you organize women into sustainable groups, they will be able to organize their commodities. They can no longer be the price taker. As they go to the market, they can determine a price for what they want to get for their commodities. At the moment, when they engage with the farmers or with the market as individuals, they are relegated to price takers. What is it that we can do to elevate them to a price maker? And that's where organizing them into cooperatives, into associations that can effectively engage with the markets comes in handy. And then the other critical thing, again, I'm glad that the minister is here, we need consistent and predictable policies. One of the key challenges we have as a country, and agriculture sector is not spared, our policies are unpredictable. Today we have this policy. A few months or a few years later, it has been reversed. And that's not what the private sector wants. They want consistent, they want predictable policies. Now, coming to where I'm standing today, as Foundation for a Smoke-Free World Agriculture Transformation Initiative, I'm sure you might be asking, what is it that we are doing to help hold the hand of this woman farmer, to help her upgrade in the value chains? We've got a number of initiatives that we are supporting in the country. The first one is identification of alternatives. Like I said, I think Malawi being an agrarian economy, the challenge we have is that we've been dependent on tobacco for so many years as the main export earner. As the global demand for tobacco begins to decline, there is need for us to support the agriculture sector to diversify into other alternatives. So which are those alternatives? And are they competitive? Can a farmer meaningfully engage in these alternatives and make a sustainable income out of those. So we are working in that space, helping to identify alternatives. And it's not enough just to identify the alternatives, but we have to build productivity. And we believe that we need to engage in proper science, technology, and innovation to address the challenge that we have. The other activity that we are supporting in is business incubation and commercialization. We have a lot of women, a lot of youth that have got business ideas, agri-business ideas, but they need mentors. They need role models that they can look up to. People that have made it in agriculture sector and they are earning solid income out of it. We are working with the Center for Agriculture Transformation that is supporting women and youth, incubating their business ideas and helping them with patient capital that they can then invest meaningfully in agri-businesses and be able to create jobs for their fellow women. We are also working in support of the horticulture value chain. I'll just mention an example of Tantwe Holdings that is also supporting the incubation of businesses owned by women, owned by youth. And in turn, those are creating so many jobs, not only for women, but also for men, young men in Malawi. We are also in the space of providing capital, patient capital, because we know that one of the major challenges that players in the agriculture value chains are facing is the high cost of finance. So that's something that we are also supporting. And add to that entrepreneurship skills, because it's one thing to have access to capital, but are you able to utilize that capital in a manner that brings the return that you're looking for? And if I were to ask today, if we were to give you capital, do you have that business idea? Do you have the skills that are required for you to really make a difference in agribusiness? We are also looking at human capital development. You may agree with me, no country is going to develop if it does not work on building skills and building the capacities of its human capital. So these women that we have to build their capacities. Whether it is in formal institutions, informal institutions, let's support them. And we are supporting some young women that are pursuing further studies, whether it's at master's level, PhD level, and those are the ones that will give back to the economy. They're going to help in various ways, in various aspects of the agriculture sector and begin to spur this job creation. Now, I want to end with a few points. Maybe you're asking, why is she so passionate about agriculture? The opportunities in agriculture sector are huge. Sometimes when you look at the population that we have, people will look at it as a challenge. But on the flip side of that, you have your market. That's your market. All of us this morning, we had to eat, unless you're fasting. Around lunch, we're going to eat. In the evening, throughout the day, you need food. So when you're looking at the population growth, it has its own challenges, but on the other side of it is presenting an opportunity. Everybody needs to eat. So where is that food coming from? From the agriculture sector. Population projections, by 2030, we might be doubling our population as Malawi. Are we prepared? Is our agriculture sector prepared to feed that increased population? That's a very big question. At the higher level, when you look at Malawi as an economy, if you begin to look at our food imports, it's pathetic. Our food import bill has more than doubled. And when you look at the items that we are importing cereals, we are importing vegetable oils, animal fats, yet we are an agrarian economy. What does that mean? Those are opportunities. Can we have some women, some of you right here today, engage in those spaces where we begin to add value? Because these are processed materials. And when you look at the economy, or when you look at the population in general, our eating habits are changing. So there is need for us to go with the trend. There is now increasing demand for processed foods. Can we occupy that space as women? Can we begin to add value to the commodities that we are producing? Let's begin to move from just being producers and marketers of raw materials. Can we begin to add value? Because that's the place where we can create the most jobs. Now, finally, Malawi is a signatory to so many agreements. The latest one that we've signed, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, is giving us 1.3 billion people as a population that's going to be demanding food. What am I trying to imply? As we look at the opportunities that agriculture sector offers, it's beyond the local market. So the local market is a starting point. But then we can move on. From the local market, we begin to target the regional markets and then global markets. Now there's a danger here. We have signed those agreements. Yes, it's going to provide a market for Malawi. But if we cannot work on the quality of what we produce, if we cannot work on the volumes of what we produce, we stand to be the losers, unfortunately. So we need to begin to work on our activities now. We need to have all hands on deck, being involved as producers, as processors, in the distribution space, in supply of technology in the agriculture sector. And finally, what we've done wrong is that we've left the farming business maybe just in the hands of a rural smallholder farmer. And I want to challenge the women that are here today. Women that can translate technology, women that can engage with the commercial banks, women that can engage with markets. Why don't you come in and be part of the players in this agriculture value chain? You will not just be a producer, you add value, you distribute, you market, and you create jobs for your fellow women. And believe me, where we've made investments in women farmers, the returns are huge. And I'm hoping that after this event, we'll get more and more women encouraged to be in the ag sector and contribute to creating more jobs, not only for women, but for youth and men as well. Thank you.
What an inspiring presentation by Dr. Candida. I was personally really inspired, and as she was making her presentation, I was thinking about what she concluded her presentation with. She said that how many of us are actually just playing it safe? You know, you just because you can produce enough to take care of your family and the people who depend on you, you're playing it safe. But I like to ask myself this question, that what would the world lack if I failed to live out my potential? I would like us to also ask ourselves that question this morning, that as wealth women, what would the world lack if we failed to live out our potential in creating and making a mark in job creation? So you might have had questions as she was making her presentations. If you are on the group that was created, I would like to encourage you to post any question or comment that you might have on the group. If you're not on the group, we've got Harry right at the back who is ready to take our questions or anything that you feel you'd like to express. As we continue, I'd like to invite on stage Tanya Clark, who is going to give us insights into Kawandama Hills Plantation and the future of industrial hemp in job creation. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. Such distinguished colleagues and guests, I feel very honored. I'm going to keep this presentation light. okay? Because I just wanted to try and basically share my story as a bit of an inspiration for hopefully as many people as possible. So I've been in Malawi for 15 years. I came fresh after university in Edinburgh, and I came to Malawi and just basically fell in love with this country and the people and everything. And even though it was just 2 weeks, I was hooked. And I said, okay, I would like to come back and build a school. I was only 24, so, you know, that age you're sort of crazy enough and maybe even arrogant enough to think that you can do such things. I hadn't had any background in international development or construction, but I was determined to make this project work. So I came and I went deep into the village up in Nkata Bay district and built a school, liaised with chiefs. Sort of being a young woman from UK, you know, I faced obviously a lot of challenges, but I had my amazing Malawian project management team as well. And it really taught me so much about myself and about what I wanted to do, how I was going to harness the power that I had learned through my education as a woman. I also faced a lot of challenges as a woman doing that project, and I really kind of reflected a lot on what is my potential? Like, what am I going to want to be doing in life? We successfully completed the project, and I fundraised in the UK for it over 2 phases, and it only cost, I think, around £100,000 in the end. So we were very much using the local communities. They were making bricks, and it was such an honor, really, to be able to be working so deeply in those rural communities. The school now has 740 odd children. We actually had a visit from the Honourable Deputy Minister of Education as well. She was amazingly supportive of that. So then I wanted to stay. I was even more hooked. And I set up Kawandama Hills Plantation. And that is essentially an essential oil plantation. We have 6,000 hectares in the Vipia, probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever come across. And I lived there for 4 or 5 years with my business partners, building up that facility. We've planted around now 2,000 hectares of our core species trees called Corymbia citridora, and we have our own distillation facility using steam to extract the oil. And in 2013, we realized we were left with all this biomass, like, because we plant our own trees, we have wood as a byproduct. So I started lobbying the government for 2 years about sustainable charcoal. And at the time, charcoal was a dirty word. And I said, well, we've got all this wood. What do you want us to do? Let it rot? And they weren't really, at the time, open to the idea of sort of openly admitting that charcoal is just used in every household across, especially urban households across Malawi. So we had to do a lot of engagement and explain this timber is sustainable. We plant the trees ourselves, and this timber, it can be used for charcoal. In 2015, we finally managed to achieve the first sustainable legal charcoal in the whole country. And I think now there are 3, and we're really hoping that there are going to be many more through community-led forestry businesses, and I think that would be a fantastic opportunity for ladies to get into as well. Then came industrial hemp. I took a bit of a hiatus. In 2013, I went to South Africa to have a bit of R&R. The 2 projects had taken a lot out of me, emotionally, physically, mentally. But at the end of that year, I decided I want to come back. And the government at the time was trying to tout the private sector for new ideas. And so I came with a bombshell and said, okay, how about industrial hemp? Basically cannabis. So I have to say, there were certain sections in the government who were extremely supportive and facilitated, and there were others that obviously were a little bit more conservative, very worried about the drug element of the plant. But we started that process in August 2013, and we achieved finally legislative reform in February last year, 2020. And we actually have some products at the end of the room here, made from industrial hemp, from other countries around the world. and you can make around 25,000 different products from it, depending on the level of value addition. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit of that background so that I can conclude by saying, you know, challenge is everywhere, and struggle and suffering is a part of life. The question is, how do you harness that? I believe strongly, and I especially had that heightened in my own spiritual journey in 2013, where I was like, I'm limitless. I want to harness this masculine and feminine energies that we all have. Not men and women, masculine and feminine energies, and I want to make myself super, super powerful. And even us as women, we need to work with our counterparts, with men, love them, love each other, embrace each other, try and pick each other up because we are more powerful together. When I look at my projects and my businesses that I've done, I've always had my male counterparts, whether it's Chitukuku, whether it's my businesses, and I'm still with them today. And we debate, we discuss, we argue, but we always come up with a plan. So I would say on job creation, you know, we've got some really exciting projects that, you know, I've been doing over the last 15 years. I think there's plenty of space in there for women as well. We have a cooperative full of 121 farmers. At least 60% of them are women. They're planting trees and they sell the leaves back to Kawandama. There's hunger there. And I think I would say, be inspired, hopefully, by stories like mine and many others. I'm hearing amazing stories, even meeting a lady today doing honey over here. And we're already discussing how we could be working together. We must come together and be stronger together. And so I'll just conclude by saying, dream big, don't be afraid. I think that we are capable of so much. And I just hope that, as I said, keeping it light today, I hope that my story can show you that, you know, you can achieve anything that you want to. Thank you.
What an inspiring presentation from Tanya Clark. And I noted one thing that she said, that challenges and the struggle, part of life. But how do you harness that to be a woman who makes a difference? So we might as well call ourselves the women who harnessed the struggle to make a mark in job creation. Beautiful presentation. I hope as the presentations are coming in, you're actually seeing yourself. You're not asking yourself what the government is going to do about it, or what the policy makers or whoever you think has got the power to make a change is doing about it, but you are asking yourself, what are you doing about it? Because you've got the power to also do something about what we are talking about this morning. Without further ado, let me call in front Mr. Jose Navarra, who is the EU delegation to the Republic of Malawi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, distinguished colleagues, the panel, the participants. I was a bit worried about coming to a to an event in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so I'll keep my mask. I hope that's okay with you. I would like to say thank you for inviting us. You know, the EU is privileged to be a partner of this event. Thank you to Francis for actually inviting us and giving us the floor. I was very positive about this back in 2018, I think it was. I remember participating, so maybe you see me again. Because I think Malawi, as development partners and as foreigners, I mean as residents here, but really not Malawians, we have so much to share and so much to tell you about that maybe you can maybe, you know, get to know other points of view through us. But anyway, I noticed that I'm the only man in the panel. And I noticed that there are very few of us here. Makes me proud to be here, because I think women's issues are not just for women, it's for everybody, for the society. I will touch upon that briefly in a second. But also because I wanted to make sure that, you know, we do events like these because we have to tell the right stories, the success stories, and the role models. This is something I will touch upon. Candida also mentioned as well. I've been here for quite a while, nearly 5 years. I think time to go soon. My issue when I speak is usually what not to say, because probably I could keep you bored talking about many things. But I will try to, I just jotted down a few points, mainly 3 points that I would like to pass. The main point I want to pass in my little remarks, my short remarks, is that you know, diplomats maybe we should not be so frank about this, but I think it needs to be said. There are cultural problems, there are cultural values in Malawi that prevent girls and women's rights, aspirations, and as a result, they should be changed. And culture can change and should change. Of course, this should not be dictated by a, Muzungu. It should be done by yourselves as your society evolves. But this is something that is rarely said, but is sometimes written. So I brought a little report from the Malawi Human Rights Commission that we support. We had some findings, and it's an open document, so you can be free to quote, to let you know what probably you all know. Of course, probably you are kind of the elite, the female elite of Lilongwe or of Malawi, and you are not into these practices, but this is the norms of the day of what happens out there in the countryside. Also, I would say that probably my values as well, the fact that I'm a foreigner. So, I'm not a gender expert. I'm not a woman. I'm a father of a daughter. I'm also not an agricultural economist. So I think my value here is also to transmit and to share what we see in other countries, in my case from the EU or from Spain, my home country, and what is not happening out there that is happening here. And some things that really shock us and astonish us out there. When we see the news from Malawi sometimes, in Europe we get stories about hyenas and things like this. So this is what hits the news. Yeah? In Rwanda it hits the news, some economic progress, some advances, some big summits, some moves in the right direction. And in sometimes Malawi what you see is these terrible stories. And this is why these events are important to counteract that reality, but yet it is very deep. I was told to tell a little bit about what we do as the European Union in Malawi. So I have to, that's my job, so I have to do it. Just briefly, we have approved a program called Sanchito. Sanchito is a 50 billion kwacha program that accompanies entrepreneurs in their journey from Tibet, technical and vocational training, to working with them through the incubators to have their development plans, the entrepreneurship plans, etc., developed, thrashed out, modulated, etc., to offer them, let's say, concessional access to finance, as well as, let's say, additional benefits for those that have social benefits, like social enterprise. So they will have additional, let's say, more cheaply sources of finance for their projects. We will do this in partnership with our colleagues at the UNDP. And it has a very important component as well on culture, entrepreneurship culture. This is something which we touched upon briefly on role models. So this is coming. We've been approved. It was signed last year. So now we're what we call in the contracting phase. This we hope that it will contribute to this 1 million job policy of job creation by the administration. So let me just say the project therefore has the education part, it has the job creation part, and it has the cultural part. So I would like to touch upon those three things very basically. The first thing on the education. I'm a trained economist, and there's very little that the economists can agree about, usually. We pretty much disagree on everything. Even some things that we consider the basics today are challenged nowadays, and I actually believe in those. But there is one thing that there's not a single economist that disagrees with. There's no one. Which is, if you invest in girls' education, they will have less children. It's like that. There is not just correlation, there is causality. There's nobody who can disagree with that. And my colleague Candida already mentioned about the population growth that you have here. You know the figures better than myself. In 1900, Malawi had 1,600,000 inhabitants, yeah? So it's more or less 500,000. You've multiplied by 35 times, more or less, in the meantime, and you are going to double in the next 15 years. This is not sustainable by any means. In the meantime, I don't know, just since you are Anglo-Saxon, the UK went from 30 million to 60 million. Yeah? So they doubled where you multiplied by something like 30, 35 times. So this is a big problem. And you may risk not tapping into the population dividend. It's a very nice word that talks about all the benefits that a young population can bring to society. We have the opposite challenge in the European Union and in some other countries, developed countries, mainly Japan and other other, let's say, industrialized nations, where we don't have enough children. But you have the opposite. But that can also turn into a curse if you don't invest in them early on and you provide the setup. I think Candida already mentioned very well, and Tanya, if you don't give them the opportunities to become job creators. On education and values, girls are not property of anybody. This is, I think, a logical statement. Nobody can disagree with that. But when you read the reports, it makes you want to cry. Polygyny, the fact that men can marry more than one wife. Some men, I'm quoting here, some men look at women and children as a source of cheap labor, and marrying many wives creates such a pool of cheap labor. This is shocking to me. Some men fail to sexually restrain themselves for periods of time. This is absolutely shocking. Wife inheritance. The fact that inheritance needs to go to the male, not to the woman, in certain parts of the country according to cultural beliefs, etc., putting them in a weaker position and having them to negotiate with an uncle or a nephew or what have you. That is also rather shocking. Kupimbila, kupawila. Parents that get into debt offer as a payment for the debt their daughter in marriage to the creditor. The child can be as young as 9 years old. Another form of kupawila is when parents send girls as young as 9 years old to stay with a rich man. The parents and the rich man would already have agreed, and money or cattle would already have changed hands. The child would be oblivious to the arrangement that her stay with the rich man is going to graduate into a marriage. My daughter is 9, by the way. It makes you want to shiver. Marriage procedures. Marriages are formalized by some form of payment or transfer of gifts from the man's, boy's family. The better the behavior of the bride, the higher the price. Yeah? Parents indicated that they would send their girl children to school so as to demand higher lobola, the price, yeah, for them. So they understand the value of education, but as a way to get greater gifts for sending her daughters into marriage. A virgin or a girl who has neither given, a virgin girl or one that has never given birth nor married before attracts a higher lobola. I think I could go on and on. I think you get the point. Is there anything more that I highlighted? Then there's a section about rites of passage. Yeah? And I thought that was actually positive because the elderly women were trying to train the girls, the young girls, with their first menstruation and the first steps into womanhood And I thought, finally, a good section. But then eventually you get to the section when you hear that the girls performed dances naked, and everyone is allowed to watch the dance. There is ululation, I don't know if this is English or Chichewa, sorry, for the best dancers, and any person is free to touch their breasts of any initiative during this dance upon giving her a gift. Okay, maybe I should stop here. This is not correct. You have the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Wow. Anyway, I'll move on to opportunities for job creation. Just keeping it very short. I don't know, Bill Gates, if you know, when he was in Saudi Arabia in 2010, there was a conference of Davos. And he was asked, how can Saudi Arabia become one of the most performing countries in the world? He said, you can't go anywhere if half of your talent is wasted. Because, of course, the condition of women in this country. So Malawi is, of course, not there, but the economic, cultural, social, etc. reality that you face is that many women are indeed disadvantaged. So again, I refer to the points of my predecessor speakers. Maybe my last point is on the role models, on civic education. Let me tell you a little parable that you may know. A group of blind men heard that a strange animal called an elephant had been brought to the town, but none of them were aware of its shape and form. Out of curiosity, they said, we must inspect and know it by touch, of which we are capable, because they were blind. So they sought it out, and when they found it, they groped about it. The first person who had landed on the trunk said, this being like a thick snake, this is like a thick snake. For another one whose hand reached its ear, it seemed like a kind of fan. As for another person whose hand was upon its leg, said the elephant is a pillar, like a tree trunk. The blind man who placed his hand upon its side said the elephant is a wall. Another one who felt its tail described it as a rope. The last felt its tusk, stating that the elephant is that which is hard, smooth, and like a spear. Now, this is a famous Indian parable, probably you heard it before. I think it's very interesting because it tells you the concept of perception. All the men were right, all of them. But of course they were seeing the reality through their lens, or actually they got feelings through their touch because they were blind. But ultimately they were all right. So on culture change, how do you expect these cultural practices in the rural areas to end if people don't know what's right? Of course, some of them may be deprived of values, but many of them are just following culture. They're following what their mothers and their grandmothers, etc., did to them, so they will replicate it endlessly. So the point of culture change is that it can change. It needs Malawians to take up the arms and teach, civic educate, and tell these people that these practices are not in line with your own standards and with your own laws. Because if you look at Malawian laws, they're fine. Yet these practices keep happening. So it's a cultural problem. And I mean, let's not forget that, roughly 100 years ago, even in Europe and most developed countries, women could not vote. In my own country, they could not vote. Even some 60 years ago, they need a husband's signature in order to open a bank account or to divorce. They could not divorce. Of course, this is, for me, something of the Middle Ages, but it's just last century. So I think this gives you an idea that, we were there, we've gone through it, and we are fine. And now you have to go through it. And I'm sure all of you are, well-educated, progressive, women, and a few men who know all about this, and you don't need anybody to tell you. But the problem is, what do we do with the people out there, the vast majority that they don't? So my last point is, let girls be girls, Let's defend, protect their rights, give them opportunities, and indeed make or strive towards cultural change. Thank you.
Another very inspiring presentation right there. And as we proceed, I am going to just take in a few of the questions that we've got addressed to the speakers we've had. And then Honorable Vera will come after this segment of question and answers. So I've got a few questions from the amazing women that are here, and some of the questions are addressed to the individual speakers, but some of them can be taken by anyone from... All right, the first question is from Tina Chimuzu. And Tina is saying, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, Dr. Candida. And she's got two questions for you. The first one, she's asking, where does one start? And then she asks further, in which high value areas of farming can one invest in? So where do we start from, and in which high value areas can one invest in the agricultural sector? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Very good question. Where do we start? Sometimes things are easily said than done, but I think if you heard in my presentation, I emphasized the need for role modeling, mentorship, because I believe that there are other people whose challenge at the moment might not necessarily be capital. They already have something to start with, but they just don't have the idea. They don't know where to start from. So some of the initiatives that we are supporting, the business incubation and commercialization activities, they are meant to support such kind of people that have got those kinds of questions. Where do I start from? So from the Center for Agriculture Transformation, as well as from the activity that we are implementing with Tantwe Holdings, those are the types of people that we are working with. Literally sitting down with you, listening to you, your ideas, and walking with you through that journey. So some of the activities, once the center is actually fully built, we may have some incubates that will be resident at the center, being taken through the agricultural value chains. Where do you start from? How do you navigate in your journey? But there are others that will be commuting. But we have those role models, a fully dedicated program aimed at supporting women and other players in the value chain. So I think you heard me emphasize in the presentation, not all of us need to be producers. So that's one thing that we need to understand. Some will be input suppliers. So let's take agriculture as a value chain. Some will be supplying inputs, whether it is seed, whether it is fertilizer, whatever it is. And then others are the actual producers that are converting those inputs into a commodity. Some are going to be off-takers. You go and engage with the farming communities, you buy off of them, you add value. So you be a processor, or you are just a distributor, you are marketing. So you really need to determine in that value chain, where do you think you best fit? There are others that will say, I really don't want to get my nails dirty. I'm talking to women. So maybe you are thinking, I don't want to be on the farm. But that does not mean you cannot engage in ag sector. You can be a distributor. You can be a processor. So when you go, for example, to Tantwe Holdings, you see them adding value. They are manufacturing different types of teas, jams. When you go to Blantyre, there are other players there, women, that are also adding value to their commodities. So there are different positions where you can enter. And for the youth, what we've seen is that they are mainly interested in technologically driven components of the value chain. So you give them technology, they are willing to come in and work with those machines in support of the ag sector. The other question? The value chains, which are those?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, look, Malawi has got the soils, we've got the climate that is fit for most commodities. The main challenge we've had is that when you look at tobacco value chain and you ask why has it been a successful story to some extent, it has been supported with research, with extension, dedicated. When you hear of Agriculture Research and Extension Trust, they were doing nothing but supporting the development of tobacco in Malawi. Then, because they have a structured market, the auction flows, commercial banks had the confidence to engage with the tobacco farmer. They were able to lend to the tobacco farming value chain because they know when the farmers sell, their proceeds will come through the bank. So we can trust them because we can recoup whatever we've given to them. Why am I saying so? For any value chain, if we were to develop it into a competitive value chain, those are the exact aspects that we are looking at. Look at research, extension, finance, and markets. So at the moment, I'll say that for the most part, we are looking at oil crops, so groundnuts, soybeans. When you look at soybeans, there's a growing market domestically for livestock feeds, for baby feeds, baby food rather. So what you need to do as someone that is asking, where do I start from? Look at the market. Do I have a market for this commodity? So for example, soya, I've just given you the multiple needs of that crop. But maybe today people will not look at those as competitive because they have not addressed the issue of productivity. So if your productivity is low, you might say, what I'm getting is very low. That's why we are emphasizing on increasing productivity. Instead of you harvesting, for example, if you're a farmer, instead of you harvesting 1 ton per hectare, can we help you to move that to 3.5 tons, to 4 tons? Then you are no longer competing at the same level. You are way up there. So you're no longer looking at a price, but you're really looking at the volumes that you're producing. So we have a lot of alternatives, and we are helping to improve productivity of those alternatives. And these are commodities that are already within the government programs. When you look at the National Export Strategy, they're really focusing at commodities where we already have an advantage as a country.
Great. Thank you very much for such an insightful answer. Tina, I hope that helps. Thank you. All right, we've got another question here from Dr. Maggie Chaika, and she's saying that the agricultural sector is notorious for subsidizing both consumption and production. Now, her question is this a sustainable way of creating wealth for women, particularly at grassroots level? Now, this question can be taken by anyone from the group.
I'm looking at my colleague because I know we are both supporting the ag sector. I'm sure you'll be contributing to that. Very correct, Dr. Chaika, your observations. When you look at the current program, the current administration rather, they are supporting the Affordable Input Program. That is supporting farmers with subsidized inputs. And then a few months later, you find the same government going to the same people, supporting them with food. Because these are the very households that have not managed to produce enough for their households. And I think it's not sustainable to support both the production and consumption. But you are, as a government, the challenge they've got is that you have those obligations to the producer as well as the consumer. But now when you ask in terms of sustainability, we really need to take a step further and understand the farmer that we are talking about. So one thing I want to underscore, farmers are not homogeneous. We are dealing with different types of farmers here. Can we take time to understand who is this farmer? Which farmers can we target with which type of intervention? So not every farmer deserves a subsidy. It's actually unethical to subsidize somebody that can afford to buy inputs on their own. So we need to take time to understand who are these farmers and what type of interventions do we need to provide for which types of farmers. So if at the point when I was encouraging those of us in here to get into agriculture, the support that you need may not be a subsidy for fertilizer or something like that. You might be needing support to get equipment and still be part of the agriculture value chain. So key thing that needs to go a message to the government, can we take time to understand who are these farmers? What kind of interventions do we need to implement? Some of them just require safety nets. So I really don't need to come to you and support your production and then come back and support your consumption. They need a totally different type of intervention. So I think it's a tricky area, but we need to ask those difficult questions and begin to deal with them.
Can I just...
Sure, please.
One more. She's touching on a policy issue that I'm not at liberty to discuss, but what I can tell you now is that we are looking into several practices in terms of how we can improve the program. So I think going forward in the next couple of years, you'll see some changes in terms of how we are doing the input subsidy programs, but also the targeting. You raise a very important question there where you're saying it's not everybody that has to be subsidized, but also maybe looking at because you're talking about billions and billions of Malawi kwacha that if we could have invested in other areas, for example, we should have been feeding ourselves for very many years to come, but also be able to export. So those are some of the studies that we are doing now. Those are some of the discussions that that are happening now at the government. So I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot of changes on that, but I'm not at liberty at the moment to say how we are going to but those are some of the things that are on the table at the moment. Thank you.
Wonderful for you.
Thank you so much. This is a very touchy, sensitive subject. Of course, the subsidization of agriculture in Malawi. From an economic point of view, it's true that the theory tells you that you should let the market work itself. Because, of course, the economy is the theory of using scarce resources for maximum output, for maximum efficiency. So why should you subsidize agriculture instead of, industrial production, for instance? Of course, there are social, political, etc., historical reasons why you do, and you're free to do so. But I think the points of maybe changes need to be made to make it more efficient, to make sure that if you're subsidizing a sector, eventually it becomes productive, so that you don't subsidize the consumption. So I think those points, I think, are very well known by the government from the DP side, from the development partners. But let's not forget, we also subsidize agriculture in developed markets. In Europe, for instance, we have the Common Agricultural Policy. It's it has been traditionally one very strong policy. And we do it to make sure the farmers have stable income, because of course agriculture varies with weather, and that's uncontrollable. And also to have stable prices, and also for environmental reasons. Nowadays, these are taking more prominence. So we also do it in the European Union, but we obviously don't do it. I mean, we do it our own way. Subsidies are something touchy. Economists usually try to say, stay away from it. But of course, there might be valid political, historical reasons why to do so. But if you do, then you need to make sure that the taxpayer gets something out of it, in terms of productivity and future growth, etc., etc. Yeah, thank you.
And excuse me,
Sure.
I thought I needed to clarify one thing. Dr. Chaika, who is this farmer that we are targeting? And it's also important for our policymaker here. Productive poor. So the poorest of the poor, let's have a totally different type of interventions for those. And as we provide a subsidy, are they productive? These are the ones that need a hand-holding. They are ready to move from one step to another. So I think that helps to further clarify who needs that subsidy. And right now, I think there's also a growing population of emerging medium-scale farmers. Can we also support those? because those ones are going to easily convert. The support that you give to them can easily be converted into something that can create more jobs for other people and also contribute in terms of increasing productivity. So nothing wrong in subsidizing, but how you target, who you target, those are some of the key questions that we need to address.
Go on, please.
As someone completely outside of this, seeing, Candida, you said before about the youth being more interested in technology and tracking software systems to actually collect the data as to how, the farmers in all the different categories are actually doing at the end of the year. Maybe that could be ramped up so that there is even more data generated to see how productivity is improving or not, and how maybe some of the subsidies are actually working or not, so that we can use modern technology to move forward a lot bigger and faster.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maggie. I hope that helps. All right, we've got our next question here from Dr. Bridget Musolomba Malewezi, and I would personally love to address this question to Honorable Vera because I've heard her speak about this topic before. Dr. Bridget is asking, how do we navigate the balance between what one is passionate about and what actually brings wealth? Because we hear a lot about follow your passion, do what you're passionate about, but what if your passions don't actually translate to wealth? What's the balance?
Thank you very much for that question. Dr. Malewezi, can I ask you just to wait for my presentation? Because that's exactly what I'm talking about today. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Our next question is from Wilma, and Wilma is asking, she's specifically directing the question to Dr. Candida, and she's saying, as an organization interested to curb the effects of tobacco farming, do we have documented, identifiable, or researchable effective alternatives for tobacco farming in Malawi, which have worked well and can be prioritized for women farmers?
Yeah, thank you. I think I touched on that a little bit in my area response. So when you look at the different value chains that we have in the country, I talked about oil seeds. So one question is to say, within the predominantly tobacco growing areas, what else can grow in those areas? And there are very good soils that are also, when you do legumes like groundnuts, soya beans, they also do very well in those areas. I know that other farmers have tried paprika before, but then one thing I want to emphasize, all these alternatives that we have, right now when you look at the margins, you may find that maybe tobacco might still be giving more on paper. But when you begin to dissect what is in that amount of money, that's when you understand that maybe what goes to the farmer is not as much as what we think is. So for these other alternatives, the main challenge that we have is productivity. So I'll keep emphasizing on that. If you get a soybean farmer that is harvesting 1 ton per hectare, and the same farmer, you support her to produce 4 tons, and the price, for argument's sake, if it's 50 cents or rather 200 kwacha per kg, definitely the one that is getting 1 ton and the one that is getting 3 tons per hectare, the one that will complain that this is not viable will be the one that is producing at 1 ton. So what we need to do as a country is to support efforts that begin to increase productivity, given the same piece of land. So land is a non-renewable resource. Unfortunately, we cannot grow the piece of land that we have. So on the same piece of land that you have, the issue is what type of management practices are we promoting amongst farmers? What type of seed are they using? What management practices are they following? So I'll give you an example, a very simple example for those of you that are farming. If you go to the farm and you have a ridge, and you have a farmer that is planting 1 row on the same ridge, and another one who is doing double row, the same ridge, just by tweaking the plant population, you are doubling your productivity. So those are very, very simple management practices that organizations need to promote. We need to demonstrate those to farmers, let them appreciate the little things that they can do. Why should it take the country 10 years before we can release a new variety? That's why we need to engage science. The varieties that we are using today, they are old. A variety maybe was released 10 years ago and you still expect it to be productive. It doesn't work like that. So can our science, our researchers, our plant breeders, can they release new technologies? Can government make it easy for them? It shouldn't be taking 10 years before we can release a variety. 2 3 years down the line, let's have new varieties, the EU programs that you are supporting. Can we release those varieties? Let farmers compete with their neighbors. So those are the little things that we need to do. Commodities are there. Look at the aquaculture value chain. Let me not forget to talk about fish. We are, 1/3 of our country is fresh water. But what are we doing with that? We are not investing in the aquaculture value chain. Right now we are importing fish from Zambia. It's a shame for us. Can we increase production and productivity for fish? So those are I'm just giving you some of the value chains that have already proven to be sustainable, to be competitive. We have a market for it, and we also have the comparative advantage as long as we address issues of productivity.
Sure, please.
Just one more point again from the macro picture. Productivity is so important also for the balance of payment situation. You are exporting mostly tobacco and some sugar and some groundnuts and tea, but other countries are producing faster, more productively, and as a result they're getting an edge. So just to give you figures, I was doing some data digging recently, and in 2009, more or less at the time of the financial crisis, the kwacha was 150 kwacha per dollar. Now it's 750, 800 or so. So you've lost some 80% of the value. Yeah. At the time of multi-party democracy, is 93, I believe it is, right, around that area. The kwacha was 2.5 or 3.5, I don't remember from memory, to the dollar. Yeah. So how many tons of tobacco do you need to buy a Toyota? I don't know. You might know the price of tobacco. Maybe you needed 2 tons or 3 tons. I don't know. No, probably a lot more than that. But anyway, now you need like many times more in order to buy the same article. Yeah. So if you are not productive, your balance of payments is going to continue deteriorating, because the value of what you produce is relatively less than what your competitors or your neighbors are doing. So, you don't want to go to a situation where the kwacha continues depreciating, because the more it does, the poorer you get in the international markets. You might think that you are getting richer if the GDP per capita is going from 300,000 kwacha a year to maybe now I think it's 900 on PPP, it's like 900,000 kwacha, so it's like treble. But at the same time, your currency is completely depreciating. So in effect, in the last 10 years, you haven't moved. You're in the same position, and also with population growth that's eating up on the growth that you have. So if you're not productive, if you're not able to produce more in the same limited amount of land, use new varieties, etc., then you continue falling back behind, because economy is like riding a bicycle. You can't stop. You can go faster or slower, but if you stop, you fall. Yeah? Thank you.
Great. Now, because of time, allow me to take just 2 final questions, and I would love to ask the panelists if we could be as brief as we possibly can with our answers, but still carrying the substance of what the person is trying to understand. So I'll get a question here from one Trevor Melanzi, and he's asking, he's starting to explain that most of the support for young women and entrepreneurs in general is geared towards social enterprises as opposed to for-profit businesses. Now he's asking that, is there a way to support pure for-profit businesses, as not all businesses that can earn people a living to get out of a poverty trap are social in nature? Is there a way of focusing on purely for-profit businesses? It was directed to Mr. Navarra, but I totally believe that it can be taken by any one of us.
Yeah, I fully agree with the point. Let's say our support to Malawi is geared to that complete direction. The Zanchito program I was talking about is for young entrepreneurs, kind of people with technical skills. I didn't say it in the speech, but at a minimum 40% need to be women, and for-profit businesses for sure. Of course, if they have some social benefits to the society, maybe they can have additional support or kind of more grants, higher grants, because there will be some grant component as well. So, but it is very true. Yeah, it's true that maybe you see it that maybe the setup here in Malawi is done so that women feel more attracted to NGOs or to social work or to these kind of things, and it shouldn't be, right? So that's the point probably of your book, follow your aspirations and follow your dreams. So if that's what you want to do, feel free. But we are definitely not advocating for just businesses, social businesses at all. Given that they give an advantage to the society, they should be compensated for it. We believe in it. So we will compensate for that in our programs, but not solely.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe just to add that one thing that's happening now is that within grants that are there to support private investments in agri-businesses, they're mainly looking for a matching component. So I think gone are the days when they'll give you 100% grant, because it has proven that when you are just given a free grant, you don't really pay attention. You don't really take it as a business. It's like someone has just given you free money. So you find that as you begin to engage with development partners, those that are able to give you patient capital, they'll be asking you for a match. Maybe they'll ask you, put in 50%, we'll give you 50%. Or maybe 30%, 70%. And basically that's to really make you take it as a business, not something that is just for free. And some of the activities that are being supported are catalytic, just to make sure that maybe one business is supported, but that business is making some technologies available at an affordable price. So not really social, but private, but just trying to reduce the price so that more and more people can access those technologies.
Great. Sure, please, Tanya.
I'll just give you a couple of practical examples as well. In Kawandama, we were supported by USAID in 2016 to 2019. And it really was a game changer for us. And it was at a time when, exactly as Candida says, the philosophy behind, grant making to for-profits to companies was starting to change. And it transformed things for us. And it was still stringent, but it was a relatively low intensity, grant, which I think that if you want the business person or the entrepreneur to succeed, you have to facilitate, but not burden us with so much like admin and bureaucracy and stuff, because also many of us might have certain skills in terms of operations, but not necessarily, heavy bookkeeping and heavy reporting aspects. So we achieved that grant, and I have to say it was a game changer for Kawandama. And in terms of Invigro now with the industrial hemp, I'm proud to say that we are also a beneficiary of the Center for Agricultural Transformation as well. And that's going to be focused around predominantly women cooperatives trialing industrial hemp seed, with Invigro being an off-taker. So again, doing more research outside of the confined trials to try and understand how, companies, cooperatives can actually benefit from that high value chain. And I will put in a plug here for cannabis and industrial hemp, because actually the EU is one of the biggest cultivators worldwide of industrial hemp, and cultivars as well, genetics. And I think that could be a really exciting opportunity for Malawi. We have an opportunity to be a pioneer on the continent. We're on par with South Africa. And if we crack on now, we will be a leader. So, I think that will provide a lot of opportunities for many of you looking for alternative crops.
Great. Okay, so I'll just take one final question from Emma. So Emma Gadengeza is asking, is the transformational approach in agriculture willing to support industrial labs of product development with private sector entrepreneurial ecosystem enablers, or is it just aligned with universities? How can enablers be included in such efforts? It wasn't directed to anyone, so I should believe that it's a question that can be taken from anyone in our panel.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Emma, I have to respond to that. When you look at, for example, the approach that we are doing as ATI, we are working with universities in terms of building that capacity, but we are also bringing in the private sector. So we are encouraging partners to work in consortiums. So you could have a partner that is from the academia and then someone who is hardcore private sector, but coming together. So each one of them bringing in their strengths. So I keep repeating the Center for Agriculture Transformation because that's where we are seeing all these partners coming together. Financing institutions, research from government, private sector, academia, coming together and interrogating all these ideas that we have. Things that we think are enablers, are they really working? And the beauty is that there is financing within those consortium spaces. It's becoming difficult to work with businesses as individuals, but as they come together as consortiums, then they are bringing in different strengths and their networks as well, and it's proving to really be facilitating, the way we are supporting in transforming agriculture.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for amazing questions and enlightening answers from our panelists. As we proceed, I would love to invite to the stage Honorable Vera Kamtukule, who is the Deputy Minister of Labor. Thank you.
My sincere apologies. I'm a civil servant, so when you're invited to make a presentation, it's usually a formal one. So I had a formal presentation with all salutations and everything else. So I completely apologize for that. So I'll try as much as possible just to go to the just the gist of what I need to say. So I had called my presentation Demystifying Wealth Creation. So as a ministry, we have gone through the entire country consulting with so many stakeholders as far as job creation is concerned. But one of the things that is coming out very critically is that we need to understand what we're talking about when we talk about issues of wealth creation, but also issues of job creation. And most of the things that I'm going to say are things that I really hold dear to my heart. These are things that I believe in. These are things that I've also been implementing. So what I will tell you today is the meaning of wealth, another meaning of wealth from what my colleagues have also said, and then barriers to wealth creation as far as women are concerned, and then the myths around issues of wealth, and then the tools that we need to create, not only to create wealth, but also to sustain it. And then obviously, I'll just conclude. There's this book that I'm going to make available to all of you by email. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. It's a book that has changed my life. It has changed the way I think. It has changed the way I do a lot of things. And I want to believe that every woman should read this book. It's by David Gikandi. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. Everybody needs a lot of money in their pockets. And he describes wealth as abundance expressed. And when you go to the dictionary, you look at the word abundance itself. It's about myriad or plenty, bounty or prosperity, and even riches. So as you can see, they did not describe the word wealth in terms of money. As a matter of fact, I think it's obscene and highly myopic for us to describe wealth only in monetary form. So wealth is not equal to money, as you will see in my presentation. So if wealth is not equal to money, what really stops women from achieving wealth. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to try as much as possible to talk about. Number one is lack of clear vision and goals. And number two is our wrong thought process. The Vice President talks about mindset change. I don't want to talk about mindset change. I want to talk about wrong thought process. And then the other issue is the inability to just be. Number four is the lack of resilience. Number five, lack of courage. Dr. Candida was talking about the perception that people have that agriculture has to be ventured into by men only, or by people who have money, or by people that are living in the rural areas. And then number six, which is most importantly, the lack of creativity, which is what I will talk about mostly when I want to address the issue that Dr. Malawi was trying to hear from me. And then the last one is not being streetwise, street smart. Yes, for you to create wealth, you need to be streetwise, you need to be street smart. And when Dr. Candida is talking about issues of research, that's the streetwise we're talking about. You just don't venture into an entity. You just heard that business of selling plastic bags is lucrative. Or like she's talking about the cannabis one. Already you go to your village, you ask your grandmother to give you the field, you start, you get the seed, you start planting. That's not how things work. You need to be street smart. You need to research. Have all the information that you require on your table before you venture into something. When I talk about visioning and goals, I think this is a cliche. A lot of people talk about strategies, creating goals, visions, and all of that. I think we know about how to create goals. But the thing that I want to address today is that life is very much precise. If you walk into a travel agent office and say, I want a ticket, I want to travel, which ticket are they going to give you? To where? They're not going to give you anything. And then you say, okay, I want to travel to a country in Africa. They're still not going to give you a ticket because you're not precise. And then you're going to say, okay, I want to travel to Ethiopia. They're still not going to give you a ticket. Why? You're not precise. Exactly. When do you want to travel? How do you want to travel? For how many days? And all of that. All right? Is it an economy ticket or is it a business class ticket? You need to be precise. That's what life is all about. So when Dr. Candida is talking about plans and all of that, you need to be exact. You need to be exact. Where do you want your business to be? How do you envision yourself in the next 5 years or so? So if we're talking about, that's why I was saying wealth is not about money, because I can give you 100 million today. In the next 6 months, I can guarantee you, you're going to have 100,000 kwacha as your balance, and you have nothing to show on the ground. Why? You were not ready to create wealth. Wealth is not about money. Wealth is about wealth consciousness. Are you conscious about wealth? And before I go ahead, every person in this room, every person that is watching us is a candidate to create wealth. So it is very difficult. According to the make chair, you need tons and trucks, a lot of trucks for you to have to put your billions inside your in those trucks you need a lot of trucks to put billions of money. So it's very difficult to imagine 10 billion kwacha, for example, because then you need maybe 20 trucks of 30 tons or something like this. But it is extremely easy to vision the life of a billionaire, the kind of car that they're going to drive, the kind of clothes that they're going to wear, the designers and all of that. It is very easy. And that's exactly what you need to be thinking about. When you're talking about wealth, do you envision yourself as a wealthy person? Do you have that picture in your mind as to how wealth is going to look like for you? So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the wrong thought process. The Bible says, as they think in their minds, so are they. You can never be separated from your thoughts. If you think you are poor, there's no one that is going to make you think otherwise. Dr. Candida here is going to come and tell you all of these things. EU is going to tell you we have this Zanchito project, 58 billion up for grabs and all of that. But you are never going to change if you're going to think otherwise. So you need to change from thinking poverty thoughts. My husband always tells me that I look at money differently. So we'll be having a conversation and I'll say, no, it's not actually much money. Then you say, how much is it? I'll say 40 million. And he's like, so 40 million is not much money. Do you have 40 million? I'm like, no, I don't have 40 million. But I just don't think like a poor person. So 40 million for me is just a figure. All right? Because money is just a commodity of exchange. It's not the value. The value is about who you really are in your inside. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So God uses your thoughts as instructions to give you the exact life that you want to have. So if you're creating your entity, if you're creating your business, you're venturing into your business, you have all these thoughts, you're speaking them, you're being them. That's what the universe is going to do, to use to give you the life that you wish. And as long as this holds true, why would you want to have negative thoughts? So you research, like I'm saying, you have all these plans and all of that, and you say, yeah, I'm going to try. I don't know if it's going to work. My dear, it's never going to work. Because the moment you start bringing those negative thoughts into your mind, you are never going to achieve anything else. Inability to be. Being is a state of mind, and you don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to have a PhD for you to be anything. All right? Happy conditions do not make you happy. Happy conditions are created because you are already happy. In the same way, you cannot explain wealth. You can only just be wealthy. All right? So if you want to be wealthy, the first thing that you need to do is to be wealthy in your mind. Are you wealthy? Are you wealth conscious? That's why you cannot be thinking of getting married and you're still living with two of your friends. Where are you going to bring that wife of yours? So when we say that a person that does not have an income is not a candidate for marriage, people say, no, marriage is not about money. No, but how can marriage go without money? So you need to be wealth conscious. You need to be ready in your mind to be wealthy. It's an internal state of mind, something that you consciously decide on your own to believe in. So in other words, it leaves no room for trial. So in life, if you want to do anything, just do it. Don't try to do it. I'm trying to do this. Don't try, just do it. If you want to do the cannabis, if you want to grow cannabis, if you want to grow soya, research on those things, then go and do it. Be definite, be precise, be certain, and believe in yourself. To acquire wealth or to create wealth, it is imperative that you feel, that you act like it, that you speak like a wealthy person that you are. You should know that you have the power to create wealth. Lack of resilience, it is, if at first you don't succeed, what do? You try again. Resilience has everything to do with focus, belief, certainty. The sure belief in your vision and your plans that it will work. That which will make you stay put and not change your mind. We see a lot of women, today you start this business, it's not working. You start another one, it's not working. You start another one, it's not working. You are not rooted. If you are selling plastic bags, as simple as those plastic bags, you should be known for that in this city. If you are into soya business, if we want to talk about somebody that knows everything about soya, it should be you. You are rooted. You know everything there is to know about that business. A resilient mind never cracks under pressure. Things will go wrong. They can and will go wrong. Look at the COVID-19, how it has disrupted the whole system, the whole socioeconomic system of the world, in fact. All right? So things will change. But a resilient mind stands strong. A resilient man understands that wealth creation is actually for the long haul. You don't create wealth in weeks. You don't create wealth even in months. It takes time. You may invest even billions of kwacha, but the return on investment won't come even in the next 2 to 3 years. It takes time. A resilient mind is that mind that is willing to say, I'm going to stay put and see the fruits of my labor. A resilient mind is willing to forgo temporary pleasures for a future that is more sustainable. A resilient mind embraces challenges, but never allows them to define them. He was talking about all these problems that women are facing. 46% of our girls, they marry and have babies before they are 18 years. All right? These things are true. These statistics, they are shocking. They are very true. But that's not all that there is to women. We have the power to change. Can you imagine a world without women? Can you imagine Malawi without women? We can never imagine our world without women. We have the power to change the trajectory of our nation, even in the midst of those statistics. Dr. Candida was talking about, yes, our girls are getting pregnant. These past 8 months, we have seen a mushrooming of babies in our villages. Plan International will give you those shocking statistics, all right? But the flip side of it is that those are customers. Those are potential people that are going to buy your bananas, to buy your soya, because those babies need to feed, isn't it? Those mothers need to feed, isn't it? So it's about how you're looking at it, the perception that you choose to define who you are. So circumstances don't define who we are. Number 3, lack of courage. Be strong and of good courage. That's what the Bible says. I will never leave you nor forsake you. God is saying, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I'm sorry. I like using the Bible because I'm a Christian. A lot of women lack the courage to even start. The Bible says, do not despise the days of humble beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. As long as the work has begun, your mind is given the gift of conceiving things that are connected to that which you're doing. As long as you start, the other thing, because the plan is never going to be given to you in 100%. You may have 25% of the plan. But as you start, all these other things are going to be connected. You're going to be connected to the right person. As a matter of fact, even this summit, God has strategically positioned you here that you should meet someone. As a matter, I wanted to learn more about cannabis, and I'm here. I didn't know she was into cannabis. And by the way, I'm coming from Katabe. I don't know about that school. I come from Katabe, so I would really like to know about that school for my future endeavors. So most women are afraid of failure. Can you imagine? How would you know how success is or how sweet success is if you've never failed? You need to have failed. I don't think Dr. Candida can stand here and tell us that she has never failed even in her business ventures in agriculture. Because they are waiting for, what if the rain doesn't come? What if the markets that they were waiting for doesn't come? What if the supply, the ones that wanted to buy their goods changes their minds? You know, all of these things happen. Sometimes the world of business is unpredictable. But does that stop us from doing what we are supposed to do? Absolutely not. So never be afraid of failure. A lot of women fail. Failure happens, and average people think that maybe that's the end. But people who are resilient, people who are courageous, they say, I have been given another, because as long as you are alive, as long as you have breath inside of you, you can live to see another day. That's an opportunity that God has given you to have learned from your mistakes and then move on. Most women are comfortable doing the common things. You know, let's go to South Africa, get clothes. Let's go to China, get suits. These days women are mavala masutotan. The ones jackets and trousers. Let's go to China and get suits. You even group yourselves. 7 of you, you go on a plane to go to China to go and get clothes. Why don't you just send one person? Or better still, why don't you just buy online? All right? So we are comfortable doing what everybody else is doing because it gives us comfort. We chicken out when we have to venture into that which we feel it makes us uncomfortable, that we don't know. They make excuses for their failure. They blame everybody else other than themselves. And then you end up selling yourself short than what you truly are. In the end, your enterprises fail and you become frustrated. Wealth making is a battlefield. That's what I will tell you. It is not easy to stand even here to talk about these things. It's a battlefield. But there's a catch. You must be willing to show courage for you to succeed. Lack of creativity. I'm going very fast. I'm going to make this presentation available to all of us. I have a problem with Christianity sometimes. I'm a very, very, very strong Christian. But sometimes people look at Christianity and they think it's an oppressive religion. Why? Because we don't talk. We want to present wealth creation as something that is secular. So a lot of people would like to talk about the kingdom of heaven and how we are going to go to heaven and see our God. And then we want to talk less about money making and all of that. That is wrong. When you're talking about wealth creation and job creation, it's actually biblical. You are spiritual. When you're making money, it's very, very spiritual. Very, very spiritual. Because God said we are joint heirs with our Father. God is no longer creating. He left the issue of creating to us. So we are supposed to be creating. It is an error to think that God is only interested in our spiritual growth. As a matter of fact, what you are saying is that you're relegating God to that level and you're saying, I can do everything on my own without his help. That is very, very wrong. A very wrong assumption. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, the Bible says, on the 7th day, God ended his work. The key word there is work. You need to work. You need to do something about anything. If you are willing to work at being creative, you are going to achieve the impossible. They were talking about, I was very shocked when she said, you can actually make 25,000 products just from cannabis alone. 25,000 products just from cannabis alone. God didn't create fur. He just created sheep. God didn't create cheese. He just gave us cows. He didn't create computers. This microphone that I'm using, God didn't create it, but somebody had to create it using the power of creativity. So you don't need to have an IQ that is so high for you to create anything. Bridget wanted to ask about when you are venturing into something that you're passionate about, then how do you balance that with making money? You see, the issue is you are underrating the power of whatever it is that you're doing. What makes you think you cannot be designing those things for other people and even other nations, really? You see, each one of us, we have a unique ability to do something a little bit better than the next person. Exactly what I'm doing here, I can give these notes to her. She'll come and deliver, but the delivery is going to be different. Why? Because this very moment, this thing that I'm doing is exactly what I'm meant to do. And so I will give you my notes, but you cannot deliver them in the same way. And that's what gives me leverage. And so each one of us, we have something that is so unique to us that when we do them, everybody knows that this has been done well. And that's what the problem is, you are comfortable to say, this is what I'm doing, and you fail to improve on that gift that God has given you. Being creative is about continuous improvement on the gift that you have as a person. So people that are creative, they explore a lot of options at their disposal. They don't just accept what is, but they take what is and use it to create something more and add value. They embrace ambiguity. But there's a catch to it. Creativity starts in the spirit. You are never going to conceive anything that is outside of you. You start creating in your spirit, in your mind, and then you start speaking it, and then it becomes reality. By the time you are going to start planting those seeds, you have done a lot of creating. That thing has already been done. It's just going to be now waiting for it to be manifested into the physical. Not being streetwise, this is my last point. This is not being a crook. It's about having the knowledge that you require to succeed in your venture. Do you have an understanding of the market? That thing you're doing, where are you going to sell it to? At how much? When? Do you have an understanding of what it takes to survive in that sector that you have chosen for yourself? Do you know how to reduce your costs so that you can maximize on your profits? Do you have the correct tools in your possessions, both mentally and physical, to prevail when conditions come? Are you aware of all the critical success factors that you need to be aware of? Do you know other people that have been in that business before that you can learn from? Because that's the other thing, especially for us women. We are very selfish like that. We don't want to learn. I don't want to go and learn from that person. They'll think that, maybe I'm not really good at what I'm trying to do. But that's the very thing because there's no one, you're not doing something that is really, it may be innovative that you're the first person to have done it, but maybe there's someone that maybe has done something similar to that you can learn from them. So go, humble yourself. It takes nothing away from you to go and learn from those that have already been on the path before you. This has nothing to do with your financial capacity. Dr. Candida was talking about you can have a lot of money but still fail to run a lucrative business. It has everything to do with the knowledge that will propel you to make the right moves and survive in the line of business that you have chosen. Unfortunately, if I ask most women, you're doing this business, have you gone to that person? You know the answer that I usually get, that person cannot teach me, and yet you haven't even tried. The issue is you don't want to humble yourself to place yourself under somebody's mentorship. That's a problem. So then, how do we create this wealth? So I didn't really want to talk about the job creation from a government perspective. I wanted to talk about the mind, psyche first, because these are very important things for us. We don't get this done. We can talk about all these business ventures, but if you don't believe that you can do this, you can create wealth, we can never succeed. You need to cause others to have wealth first. So whatever it is that you know, exactly what the panelists are doing here is exactly what you need to do. The problem that comes in now is the fact that you want to be the only one who knows that. Yes, that's really good. You have to be the best in your game, but you have to give it. Whatever you want to have, you have to give it first. That's the law of nature, and it will come back to you. It doesn't make you, good is a business. That's not true. You see, one thing that we forget is that there's a God in heaven, and he forgets nothing. Whatever you plant, you shall reap. And so if you are sowing very good seeds in another person to ensure that another person succeeds, you are definitely going to achieve. You are going to reap that. What they're doing, the incubation that they're doing, teaching other women, hand-holding other women that want to venture into several other businesses, that's exactly what you also need to do. I host so many people that come to my office, come to my house, that want to learn the very business that I'm running, and you're thinking, okay, I'm teaching my competitor. Do it anyway. There's enough space for all of us at the top. If you understand that, there's always going to be that thing that only you can do. So even if there was an influx of so many people, quality, you can never buy class. You know that. There's no price tag to class. So class can never be copied. What is unique to you will forever be with you. The second thing that I want to say on that one, do business that increases people's productivity. There will always be money in food production. Always. She was talking, I like what she said. That's why I told her, I said, you just did 80% of my presentation. When you talk about food production, you're talking about distributors, suppliers of goods, transporters, what? Things that increase people's productivity. Software development, mobile money, mobile food, and everything else. Those are the things that we need to venture in as women. You know why? Because we know the burden of low production. It falls on women. So we are the ones that should sit there and now start creating novel ways on how best we can still use the same problems that we think are problems or challenges to make wealth. Do businesses that are designed deliberately to give rather than to receive. Build a business on mutual benefit fundamentals. Do not make profit at the expense of other people. So do not exploit people. Remember, you reap what you sow. So what happens, sometimes you can succeed for some time, but eventually those things have a funny way of coming back to you to bite you. So whatever you do, ensure that you are practicing good business ethics. Most importantly, work at increasing your value first as a person. Read books, attend summits like these ones, ask people, inquire, do research, use the internet, increase your own value. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was you are wealthy by nature. You were born wealthy. Therefore, exchange that value that you have inside of you by providing unique goods and services, things that only you can provide, and exchange it with paper money. Ronaldo, I like football so much. Ronaldo and Messi, okay, I'm a Ronaldo person, so I'll talk about Ronaldo. He's described as a god, greatest of all time. He did not become a god overnight. You have absolutely no idea what he has to do every single day, practicing how to kick that ball into that net every single day of his life. And therefore, you cannot become the greatest of all time in your venture if you don't take time to invest in yourself, to learn and improve at your game. May God bless you as you consider to go to the other side of life, to create wealth, not only for you, but for other people as well. Thank you so much.
Whoosh. Wasn't that inspiring? It was, right? And I have personally been privileged to have Honorable Vera as a personal mentor. And most times when I go to her with something that I want to do or an idea, normally what she would ask me is, when do you want to do that? Do you need help doing it? And then if I'm like, I want to do it next month, do you need help? No. She's like, no, if you don't need help doing it, then it's not big enough. Try something bigger. She's always challenging my mind. She's always inspiring, and today has really been amazing, and thank you so much for that inspiring presentation. I was given the privilege to just briefly talk about the book that you've been given on your desk, and I'll just use less than a minute to talk about it. So the book is titled Go for Gold, and I basically just used God to illustrate the fact that we have got reservoirs of great potential within us to achieve pretty much anything that we want to achieve. I like to use a very personal example that when I was in college, I started, then it was a club of a sort at Chancellor College called Women Inspire, and would go out to the communities to reach out to women and girls to empower them in education, economic empowerment, to enable them and capacitate them to take up leadership roles and be very financially independent. And it continued to grow, and as it grew, the vision got bigger and bigger. And I said, you know what, I want this to grow into a very well set up, sustainable organization. And it got quite challenging in the way, but I kept on and I kept on. There was a certain year that I just felt like we are just doing these things, but we're not growing, like we're just on the same spot, but we're not growing. And then at one point, while I was in the process of writing the book, I was passing Blantyre, somewhere in Manja side. I was passing by these people, these men who make quarry. So like, I'm a wanga kwanya miala to make quarry. And I saw how they're very dedicated. So I had a very brief conversation with one of them. And I asked them, how is it that you can have the persistence to break this huge stone into quarry? And he gave me a very straightforward answer. He said, it's because when we get the stone, the huge rock or whatever they call it, we keep hitting on the same spot until it breaks. And so it's not really hard to just keep hitting on the same spot. We don't hit this spot today and come tomorrow hit the other spot. We keep hitting on this same spot. If we have to hit it for a whole week, the same spot, it eventually breaks. And I was like, the power of focus. And I explained that in the book. I called it the rock theory. I just made that up to make it into a theory. And then after that, I was really inspired to go back to what I was doing with the organization. And I said, you know what? One day, Women Inspire is going to employ people, full-time employ people, and we're going to do bigger and better projects and all of these things. And it got harder and harder, but I still kept saying, you know what? The rock theory. I'm going to focus. I'll keep hitting on the same spot, And as it is, things really have been better, because that same organization that started as a club about 3-4 years ago has got about 10 full-time employees, and we've got employees who have done more school education, master's degree holders, and I haven't even graduated college yet. It's because I had the vision for it. And when it got hard, I kept pressing, the power of focus, the rock theory. So when she was talking, I kept thinking about how we really, each of us, have got the power to create wealth. And like she said, it really starts with the belief in our minds and the tenacity, which I believe that each and every one of us here possess. So I hope you enjoy the read. Thank you very much, Harry, for the opportunity. Having come this far, I want to believe that you've really been inspired, and that we're going to go out there and be women who take up the challenge to create wealth and to make a mark in job creation. At this point, allow me to co-confront Harry, please.
Wow, it's been an inspiring morning, isn't it? Wow. Thank you very much, all our presenters. I would love to ask us to just give them another round of applause. It's good to appreciate others, right? Even if we give them a standing ovation, it wouldn't hurt anyone. Can we stand and just see, things that you do for others, one day they shall be replicated to you. It's very important to exercise a heart of gratitude. I'm going to do this in about a minute because I know our guys have to conclude. But thank you very much all for coming, and thank you very much all our presenters. At least I've met at least 2 people new. I've made 2 friends today. And I'm sure during our break, I'll be able to make more friends. You see, one of the things that breaks my heart is when we are discussing in forums like these ones, normally we leave out the rural masses. You know, can you imagine the productive poor that Dr. Candida were mentioning about? People that are keen, you know, to learn a thing or two from people that they look at as role models. You see, on the 1st of February, we started a campaign, a Choose to Challenge campaign, where we would have women that would speak what Choose to Challenge means. I'm glad that Dr. Maggie, as one of the people that was part of that campaign, is here. But I just want to share with you a story of one rural girl from Ikwendeni. I don't even know how she got hold of my number. But she called and said, I want to be a part of this campaign. And I asked her, can you write in under 50 words what you think Choose to Challenge means for you? What she wrote, I couldn't understand a thing. But you could tell that she's got a heart that wants to progress. So I decided to call her so that I understand better. You know, and one of the key things that she said was that one of the challenges that I have, I wish I could have a mentor. I wish I could have a coach. You know, and I condensed what she was saying to me, and I wrote for her what Choose to Challenge means because I could understand the sense. And when we flagged out that particular flyer, one CEO from ETHCO, Mrs. Lusuwilo Chakaniza, decided to adopt this girl. And you see, when I linked the 2 together, you could see how grateful that girl was. You see, all of us dream, but we don't dream equally. Others dream from the dusty recesses of their minds. Others, what they think is a good thing is just to wear, you know, that wedding dress on that wedding day, or just to be given into marriage. But there are others that are dreaming, people like you that are dreaming with their eyes open. They have got the privilege of writing a vision and running with that particular vision. There are a lot of girls out there that also need that kind of exposure. They need to be held by the hand so that they can progress. You see, when I saw that flyer, I was so determined that I need to push this dream. Because it was very easy for this dream to be dropped on the way. Because we were told that people have done this and they have failed. In 2016, this started with a magazine. Just a magazine. We started with a magazine. And the magazine evolved into what we called Wealth Creation Forums. And Wealth Creation Forums gave birth to this Wealth Woman Summit, which also gave birth to what we call Wealth Woman Magazine. Today, at 12 midnight, we shall release the 2nd issue of Wealth Woman Magazine. And all of you, because you are here, you are going to benefit a free copy of that magazine. So you see that we are featuring phenomenal women that are making a mark in this nation. You see, on the cover page, there are 3 phenomenal women. All right? One of you may know the former acting CEO for PPPC, Audrey Mwala. Some of us, we know the fight that our ombudsman has been fighting. And some of us, we know there's a young girl many of you may know. And I get inspired when I see her posts. Mavis Kanjad. You see, our role is to tell the African story. We don't want Europe to be telling a story about hyenas, but when you're doing the right thing here in Malawi. So all of us have got the responsibility to rise up and tell the right story about our country. So Wealth Magazine is about telling the true Malawian story. And one of the persons that we are going to feature is the late Blandina Kondowe. She chose to challenge all of us. Many of us that are here, we know what she stood for. And tomorrow, the only flyer that we shall flag out is the flyer that is respecting that which she called all of us to do. So may we celebrate people that have to be celebrated. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much, EU, for your support. We've got all these people that were able to support financially and in kind. And I want to say thank you to all of you for coming. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Bingo International Convention Center. Well, just to mention that this has been a very inspiring summit. We had speakers in the name of Honorable Vera Kantukule, Deputy Minister of Labor, and of course we had the EU delegation.
One thing, we just have one thing that we are supposed to do. Just one thing, under 5 minutes. Thank you. But our speakers, we can sit on the table. Thank you very much. So after that, we shall all go for our cocktail lunch, which is ready for us. Thank you.
We also have the EU delegation to Malawi. That's Mr. Jose Maria Medina Navarro, and of course Dr. Candido Nankoma, who is Country Director, Foundation for a Smoke-Free World Agriculture Transformation Initiative, and of course Tanya Clark, who's also founder of Invigro. Well, a lot of stories, a lot of presentations that came here were full of inspiration and, of course, motivated the attendees to actually step into another level of bringing agribusiness in Malawi to another level. So this is the end, and the summit was made available through support of Wealth Create, European Union, EFCO, Kwanza, of course, Umodzi Park, and Deloitte. Well, everything was made possible through the directorate of the moderator, who is actually Deliwe Makata. On behalf of Zodiac, of course, radio and television, and on behalf of the crew, that wonderful crew that has worked with me today, my name is Philip Caetano da Costa. Continue watching and listening to Zodiac.